Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah Musherah. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Light It Up. I am your host, Dr. Aginah Musherah. So excited about this episode as I am each and every episode because I find the most amazing guests to have on Light It Up. This guest is very special to me because she's more like a little sister. Although she's done some very amazing things that I just haven't had the courage to do, and we will talk about that in this episode. But I am blessed to have today Miss Siddeeqah Ra'Oof as a guest on Light It Up. Siddeeqah is a veteran in the hair care industry. She's going to tell you all about that. But right now, she serves as the Director of Education for Diva Curl. So welcome to Light It Up.
Thank you, Dr. Aginah. Yes, my big sis. It's like a pleasure and an honor and just like a ball of excitement to be here with you. Finally, we get a chance to like sit down and have our conversation outside of our other conversations that we
Right. Yeah, because we've been talking about this. I talked about this with you last year when I launched Light It Up, and then it was just crazy timing and we couldn't get it scheduled. But you're here. And what a great month for you to be on the episode of Light It Up because it's March, it's Women's History Month. And I'm all about the empowerment of women, particularly Black women, but women also in general. And I wanted you to come on because although I'm older, um, I just find what you have done with your life professionally and just, I guess, on a personal level, I have always admired you. So I just want to give folks just a little bit of background of how we go back. Our dads they went to high school together, right?
have
Yeah.
school together. Yep.
Yep. So our fathers from Birmingham, Alabama, they went to high school together, best friends. So Siddeeqah's dad is like my second dad, god dad. And Siddeeqah, yes, a little sister that I didn't have. And for a period of time, you were here in Chicago as a youngster. So I was definitely your big sister then. But one thing that I will remember always 19 years ago, you decided to move from Birmingham, Alabama to New York City. And I don't know how old you were, but I do remember, I will always remember the year because it was right after my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It stands out in my mind because it was a year and a day right after 9/11. So that was 2002. And I was 22 years old, fresh out of college, had just graduated in May. And in September, woohoo, I was in New York City. No family, no friends, hardly any money that would even be reasonable to talk about. And here I am, like
so
a
talk about being fearless and just at 22 years old making the decision to go to New York City without, like you said, no family. You didn't know anybody. What was this something that you always dreamt of doing? How did you come to the decision that after graduating from college that you would move to the big city life because you're a Southern girl? So what was the premise behind that decision?
to be quite honest, it really just kind of happened. It spawned out of conversation with my father and my mom. And what did I really want to do? I had graduated school, and I at that point I had moved to Atlanta with my dad actually. And I was working with him at his business. He owns a construction company. And I had ideas of possibly going to graduate school to get my master's. And I just I wasn't feeling it, to be quite honest. And I just was like, what can I do to express myself? Like, I definitely had the business acumen, and I wanted to be there and be a support to have that content, that continuity to like a family business and a contribution to it. But it just, as creative as it is, it just wasn't fulfilling for me at that time.
Mhm.
And I sat down and I had a conversation with my dad, and he was just like, "Oh, so you went to college, and what are you going to do? Hang your degree over your salon chair?" And I'm like, dude, with all due respect, there's like hairdressers that make more money than you. There's hairdressers that make more money than a lot of people that even live around us. So it's not in the sense of me just, and it's no shade or disregard to anyone that does that, but I just had different ideas and visions of what that could possibly look like. Even though I didn't have a complete picture of it, it was still very abstract. And he was like, all right, cool, so if you're going to do that, then here's what we're going to compromise. You're either going to go to California or New York, and you're going to go somewhere where you could do this and be at the top of the game. Those are like, New York is like fashion capital, everything. Then you have your Californias where it's like Hollywood, and that part of, not trying to turn me into Hollywood, but proximity is important, right? Being in the right place at the right time. So thinking about like taking that business acumen with that creativity and putting it in a kit, and elevating it to the next level. Those are the two prime places outside of going international, right?
Right.
So we sat down and we had a conversation. Honestly, it just it happened. I had no idea it was going to happen. I was like, listen, I'm feeling what I'm feeling on the inside, and I'm not feeling going to grad school. This is what people expect me to do, but this is not what I want to do. So when am I going to like stand up and fight for my rights? And that's what I did. I started negotiating very early, even in my own home. So fast forward, we had a conversation due to some acquaintance and association of my stepmom, who
Mhm.
has a friend who had a friend who lived here. It just kind of worked itself out, and I sought out a little bit more of an advanced vocational program at Aveda Institute, because I had already been doing hair, and that's why New York and California were more of the options, because I didn't need to go learn how to do hair. It
Mhm.
was more the process, the technicalities behind it to get my licenses, but how could I do that at the same time and still continue my momentum moving forward? And New York just worked out. California was clear skied across the country.
Mhm.
Again, right after 9/11, a lot of people had financial impacts because of that. And May, I can't even remember when I started that conversation. All I know is I graduated in May. And September 12th, I landed here. I still have my ticket. They used to print the tickets out, those
Yeah.
little
Uh-huh.
tickets. I still have it to this day. And I remember it was a very somber experience, because it was one day after 9/11, September 12th, 2002. And
Mhm.
you can see everybody on the plane just kind of like,
Mhm.
like, this might be the first and the last time I see you, but we're not going to even talk about it. So it was a very interesting transition in and of itself. And I wouldn't say that I was fearless, because it was extremely scary. It was just
Mhm.
more about, I think I was more afraid of the what if
Mhm.
than not what is happening. Like, what happens if I don't take this chance? What happens if I sit here? What happens if I go forward in a path that I'm being forced into? And I think I was more afraid of that than jumping here. So
Mhm.
it wasn't necessarily like a fear girl, because I boohooed when my dad got in that car and left me in New York. I was just like, what did I just do to myself?
Mhm.
So it wasn't a lack of fear by any stretch of the means. It was just what they say, like having the courage to just like fight through it. I
Mhm.
was, listen, I'm here now. So I personally wanted to see what I was made out of too. So I was like, let's go for it.
It's so, as I'm listening to you, when we're on the outside looking in, of course, we see things differently. And so as you were talking about that, it wasn't that didn't have some ounce of fear, but of course, that's not what I saw. I saw this courageous, fearless, young 22-year-old, and it's even 22 making the decision, you know, to leave. Um, I think about some of the decisions that I made at the age of 22, which were, some pretty adult decisions. I don't know, maybe it's something in that number for us. But when you went to for undergrad, what was your field of study? Was it business?
Business administration, yes, with
Okay.
the administration and management, yes.
Okay. So you get to New York. Um, you start your vocational courses, that sort of thing. Do you immediately begin to work in the hair care industry? Can you kind of walk us through that process? Because you've done some pretty great things even in the industry in terms of your advancement as well over the years.
Okay, thank you for that. So to answer your question, let first point, no, I didn't start immediately working because I was going to school at night. So in New York, as far as like I didn't want to set myself up for failure and get started in the situation and then send myself back 20 paces. So I tried to follow the process and the protocol because I understand each state, for those of us who aren't aware of it, as far as like cosmetology, barbering, any type of aesthetic programs, esthetician, massage, all of those things, each one of them, each state has its own mandate about its required amount of hours. So California, one reason how I wound up at New York, just to sit back with that one, New York had a more condensed timeline for me than a California would have. Not that that was a bad thing, but when you're hungry and you're ready to get up and get out, and you have limited time in regard to like your support that's coming in, a
Mhm.
1 year program versus a 2 3 year program looks a little bit more, it looks a little bit more, desirable to you. And also, just from a personality fit, I just, as much as a beach bum as I am, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I love a beach. As
Mhm.
much as a beach bum as I am, like my personality just, I mean, outside of growing up in Birmingham, like outside of my accent, you would just probably think I was born here. It just fits.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how that went. So I was going to school at night. I was in a part-time program. So I would go to school at 4 o'clock downtown in Soho. And during the day when I first got here, just being thankful that I had and I have parents who were extremely supportive. My father at the time was able to provide me with what you would consider like a stipend to
Mhm.
allow me to have food and basic necessities and things of that nature until I got my feet planted on the ground. And once I got settled in school, I started learning my way around New York. I used to just get on the train and get lost and find my way back. I don't like not knowing where I am. So once I started navigating around the city, I actually started to register with some temp agencies because I knew I couldn't take anything permanent. But over a period of time, I started getting these long-term temporary jobs. I even worked at Columbia's Teachers College for months at a time. I had another position. So during the day, I would work odd jobs here and there. And then at night, I would go to school. And once I got my license, I immediately went into the salon. And that was just kind of how that went.
Okay. And you also, because I've watched you, obviously, you do all types of hair as well. So you're not just, you don't uh, you didn't position yourself to where you were only doing hair for Black women. You have the skills and talents to do all sorts of hair. Is that not correct?
Extremely correct. And that was one reason why I wanted to expand my horizons and my exposure to that, because in a certain way, not that I had perfected it, but it was one of those things where I was like, what's next? Like what can I add to it? And even in Birmingham, I still had clients, no matter what their skin type was, their hair types were extremely diverse. So one could consider that I had clients who looked like me and you that
Mhm.
had what you would consider Caucasian type hair.
Okay.
Um, it's not Caucasian hair, it's not black hair, it's hair.
Mhm.
There are some women of color who have like extremely straight, silky hair, and there are non women of color who have very textured,
Mhm.
tight, coily hair.
Mhm.
So for me, hair is hair. And that was one of the reasons when I explained it to my dad that I wanted to leave from down there because I wanted to be able to no matter where I went in the world, be able to touch everybody's hair, because I've just always been intrigued and inspired by hair in general, no matter where it came from. And the fact that I didn't have that much exposure to it when I was younger just fueled that hunger for me to be exposed to it even more. So that's why New York was just like perfect for me.
Okay. So how did you went into the salon, you did hair for a period of years, and then you decided to transition onto the, I don't know
Corporate,
what you call it, the product side or
probably you can call it going corporate.
okay. So what made you decide to go corporate?
Circumstances, having gone to business school, also having parents and everyone around me who are entrepreneurs and very business minded, I understood what was happening. I used to work in what one can consider like high rent district in New York, one of the areas. And when, not rich, but when wealthy people stop spending money on luxuries, there's a problem. That
Mhm.
doesn't happen too often. So even, I don't know if most of us even realize it, even in depressions, even in economic downfalls, like wealthy individuals, most often than most, more times than not, they're not hugely impacted by those things. And the luxuries of life still carry on beyond a certain degree. It may not be as frequent, but they don't stop.
Right.
And they stopped, I knew it was time. And I had got used to making a certain type of money myself. So, and also, again, being in a Shark Tank, knowing
Mhm.
I had to sink or swim, I, in the back of my mind, those conversations that I had with my father and my mom back in the day was, here is the universe pushing me in that direction, which I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I knew having gone to get my degree was setting me up for a time in my life that was going to cause me to recall that. I didn't know when it was going to be, but that was that time. And then that's when I sought out other opportunities with in my industry, but relative to developing my business acumen in a corporate sense, because again, I didn't want to go home with my tail in between my legs. And I wasn't ready to give up then. So I stuck it out. I mean, I might be a little crazy, but I ain't stupid. I definitely I would have known when to, like, put my cards on the table and fold them, but it just wasn't time yet. And I stuck it out. And girl, I used to go to corn. People might not believe it. I've been at corn star pouring coins down the corn
Mm.
star thing to pay my rent. I used to eat bagels for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, eating slices of pizza, horrible acne because all I eat is pizza and drink coffee. Like, and this is what I try to tell my nieces and my nephews, like, you all see certain things, but you didn't see the in between. And it
Right.
wasn't there. I didn't document it, and I wasn't trying to use it as a Achilles heel or anything to like harp on. But like, yeah, I put some elbow grease into getting to this point. Like,
Mhm.
it wasn't all like this. It wasn't a crystal stair.
Right. I think that's an important point to make. And I mentioned it earlier, even with me looking at, your evolution and your decision to move, we didn't see, I wasn't necessarily privy to everything that you experienced to get to where you are now. And I think that, as a society, as people, oftentimes that's what we focus on. We focus on the end product, what we see, but we don't know what all of the work, the hard work and effort and sacrifices that, your success entail. I can tell you, I get all of the time from people who, talk about the fact everybody knows that my world, my heart belongs to my children. People don't see the fact that I'm a divorced mom of three, that it's not easy. I mean, I've been fortunate and blessed to have children who so far have done everything that I've asked them to do. I mean, they can give me a little bit of grief every now and then, but people don't see what goes on behind the scenes. They don't see what I go through trying to raise three children without the support of my ex-husband in terms of being there, as a co-parent. I'm not talking about the financial aspect, but just,
Oh,
co-parenting in general.
tangible things. It's
Yeah.
like being there to hold a hand, hug somebody, give a, if you made a high five or like good job, those things go a long way. And I
Mhm.
think in our community, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't have children, but I'm on the outside. I have been a child,
Mhm.
I have had parents. So, and my brother has children, and I have friends who have children. One thing I will say is that the focus on the financial part of it, I get it. I get it. Children are expensive. Hell, grown adults are expensive without having children. I can tell you that right now. So, but I'm just going to use myself as an example. For all intents and purposes, like you and I can both say, as far as like material needs, we didn't want for
Mhm.
anything as far as that goes, relatively speaking. You
Right.
know, our parents weren't a part of the Billionaires Boys Club, but we had very nice, comfortable, adequate lives, if you may. But with that comes a lot of hard work, a lot of time away, a lot of our dads and our moms sacrificing those things. So, in a large way, we were very well cared for, but at the same time, I can speak for myself, kind of left up to my own devices in a large portion of that time.
Mhm.
And those are the things that, as a child, you're talking about being fearless and courageous. Like, I went to my dad and I told him, I don't want your money. I don't want you to buy me clothes. I don't want these things. I want to know what your favorite ice cream is. I
Mhm.
want to know what you like to watch on TV. I want to know what your favorite color is. Like those things mattered to me growing up.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. We got to pause there because now I'm going to start crying.
It's okay. It's okay. Like we said, we're going to take the conversation where let people see you be vulnerable.
I don't care about that.
Let people see you be vulnerable. It's fine.
So of course, I had a moment because I was thinking about my father. Because I always felt like um, a lot of the decisions that I made just with school, um, graduating from high school early, college, a lot of times, people ask, like, well, what's the motivation? And I always wanted to make my father proud of me. But I also felt like I was competing, trying to get his attention too. Of course, I knew my dad loved me, but when you have parents who are working hard and they have their passion and their vision for what they're trying to build, and when they, I guess, have to do things for so many other people, it can feel like, you know, you're an afterthought.
Hi, I'm over here. Yeah.
Right. And so just thinking about, like, I didn't have conversations with my father like that. Like, well, what's your favorite color? Everything was about teaching a lesson, whether or not we were driving in the car. Um, Huge Nancy Wilson, Smokey Robinson fan because that's all my father listened to. So I knew what he liked, but we didn't have like those type of conversations. Um, and those are the things that I do wish growing up, that he would have just stopped to take the time to, kind of lighten up, not be so serious all the time.
Girl,
Because
I forced that issue, so you can talk to Raouf about it. Like I forced that issue. Girl, my heart was about to jump out of my chest. But again, even again, just going back to being like a little tight. I couldn't have been any more than like 8, 9, 10 years old at that point.
Mhm.
I was just like, something's not right. Like I just always just kind of like went with it. And it wasn't a bad thing, but it was just like, this is what, I don't know, maybe intuitively I just realized, like, closed mouths don't get fed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The other piece is that you can lose a lot of time, you know, when you don't stop and just say, what is it that you need? Expression, communication, really. And it's all about how you communicate. I was recently interviewed for an article, and um, the person asked, like, when did you first discover your passion for writing? And I immediately thought about when I used to write letters. Um, I really wrote the letters to my father. I didn't write the letters to my mother because, we talked all the time, talked to my mother all of the time about anything. But my father was always difficult to talk to him. So I wrote letters, and I would pour my heart out in the letters. And then that's when we would have our conversation. So that was the way that I would have to, get his attention. But I still, and I don't want to come across as if I didn't get attention from him, but the type of attention that I yearned for. Um, because we also know that parents do the best that they can, and the best, with the tools that they have and how they know how to parent. But at the end of the day, oftentimes that child is still either going to feel like something is not good enough, or they wanted their parent to parent them a different way, you know? So,
Yeah, and that's why I like, I think there's an opportunity, especially for even our community, especially in separate households. It's not, again, the money aspect is definitely important. But again, that time and that type of interaction matters.
mhm,
And I get away with my sisters and my brothers who use their children as bargaining chip tools to control the other party, or it's only about the money. Like I said, I take it from somebody who's been a child,
mhm,
and these children are exceptionally quicker than we are. Like, it's not going to work out for you in the end, because as we grow and we start to put two and two together and we start dialing back in our memory box and our toolbox, trust me, it's never going to work out, because as human beings, we are innately wired and set up to connect with each other and love each other and develop and grow with each other. And it is not about a dollar.
right.
People, I have been to our ends of the world, even to Thailand, even in Dominican Republic, with kids running around with no shoes on. Those kids were just as happy as they wanted. They were sitting around their family. They were all there together. That stuff matters, but then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And in this country, we're just so focused on the material goods that even with this pandemic, and we're a year and some change into it, I think. Um, I just remember all of last year, while everyone, and I look at what parents are going through for some of the states or cities that their children are still learning remote and that sort of thing. But I have to tell you, I um, counted it as a blessing that I was in a position, and have been fortunate enough to be in a position to be at home with my children and still working while they're in school remote for the last year. But I was like, this is the perfect time for me to continue to bond with them, because I don't have to worry about, ripping and running, trying to physically get to work. And that's cutting away from the time that I can actually be spending with my children. And then I think it gave me an opportunity to really reflect on what's important in life, you know. So it was, this has been like a period of reflection for me, and just trying to look at um, all of the things that I've taken for granted, you know, in life, and trying to make sure that I keep my children grounded and not take, um, what they've been blessed with for granted.
Yeah. Like for me, like I went home to Alabama a few weeks ago. I hadn't spent that much time with my mom in over 20 something years, because I've been in New York. September made 18 years. And then on top of that, I went off to school. Of course, I used to come back and forth home, but a continuous month of time in over 22 years have I not had that type of time and
Mhm.
space and energy with my mom. And that was precious to me. And, being in New York, people like, oh, how did you just get up and move away from your family and this and that and the other? And I knew what I had to do for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't it, staying there. And as painful as it is to, and I'm not even saying was, as it is, because I miss every day with them. I miss my nieces and my nephews. One of my nephews, when I first moved, he took this a little difficult. He was like, "Why did you move away, Auntie? You're like my best friend." And he didn't understand that I couldn't just come pick him up. He's like, "Can you tell the airplane to come bring you to see me?" You know, like after a while, he started to like understand, but it wasn't easy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still not easy. So again, when you follow, I guess, your passions, and I didn't even know if it was a passion, but it was just something on the inside of me that was pushing me, that I couldn't sit still where I was. And I didn't know where I was going when I got here, but I felt, even in my discomfort, I felt oddly comfortable in it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes any sense. It felt like I was freeing myself to realize myself
Mm-hmm.
for a change, because I was very much like you, wanting to make my parents proud, wanting to like shine in my dad's ear. You know, they have very high standards, and they, because they're very like they're high standards in and of themselves, right? So, and not in a militant way or anything like that, but just like there's this unspoken thing, like you got to show up,
Right.
like, and I I figured out I needed to show up for myself first. No
Do
matter how hard I tried to show up for other people, I was on the other end of the stick feeling some type of way about it. No
Mhm.
matter how much accolades I got, no matter, oh, good girl, no matter how many honor roll ribbons and stuff like that, I would still be sitting over there in the corner like, I don't really feel, I don't really feel that great about this.
Mhm. There are so many, we just talk about women who go through this, who give themselves to everyone else, who's always trying to make everyone else happy, but then they don't have anything left for themselves, or they just don't stop to give themselves what they need. I guess, what you describe is a way that you had to make a decision that was going to actually give you the space to be, like you said, to be who you are. What advice can you give those of us who may be stuck, who are constantly pouring into others, constantly, trying to do things to appease other people, but on the inside, really are not in a good space or are hurting because they won't, allow themselves to live?
What advice I would have for someone who's stuck is really, we all have a magical inner voice, right? We all call it intuition. We call it the voice of God. We call it guidance. We call it whatever. But there, in simple terms, we all have this inner voice that speaks to us that a lot of us drown out. I will say, being ingrained in every other aspect of everyone else's life prevented me from hearing my voice. But
Mhm.
once it was always something, it was always a feeling, right? That I would just ignore because I would get busy, or I would, find another task to accomplish, or another medal to get, or another sport to play in, just for the sheer enjoyment of it, because I had this energy in me that I didn't really know what to do with. It's just take some time and sit back, and again, not being fearless, but have the courage to say, I don't feel right. And even if you don't know what that means for you going forward, I don't feel good. I don't feel fulfilled. I know I need something, but I might not know what it is. And that's okay, because again, like me, I came here no itinerary whatsoever. Girl, I tapped my way around in the dark, but I was okay with that.
Mhm.
I think we have to be, I think not have to be, I think it would be wise to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And a lot of us don't like discomfort. I place myself in uncomfortable situations all the time for the sheer act of conquering that fear. I don't like being afraid of things. So I'm the type of person that I'm going to get over that fear because that fear stifles me. And when I feel stifled, I feel suffocated. And when I feel suffocated, I feel like I can't breathe. And I'm a butterfly. I like to fly and I like to breathe. So when I don't like something, I just got to the point where I was like, screw it. I'm going to change it. And people can give you all of these steps. It starts with you. Just be real with yourself
Mhm.
and just sit with it and be okay. Just as happy as I am, I'm okay with that. When I feel tears or an emotion come on, I sit, I process it, and I let it pass, and it's like it never happened. So I just think this is a time, and this is what COVID has done. I was already there, but we have lost our calibration with our inner selves. We have been so distracted and so inundated by messages, and you need to do this, or you should have this, or even me, I get from people, oh, it must be something wrong with you. You 40, I don't mind telling you 40 years old, you ain't never been married, and you ain't never had kids. Nah, maybe it's something wrong on the opposite side because I've been there and done that where I was in serious relationships and saw that it was going left. I just kept going and life has just happened that way. I have friends, and it's no shade,
Mhm.
that are in marriages that are just as unhappy as they want to be.
Mhm.
So really and truly, who is that for? who
Right.
who is that making comfortable? A child, a life that I'm responsible for is not a game. Again, I have been a child.
Mhm.
I would not want to not be able to, in the best sense that I'm aware of, have something to be able to offer them. And when I say something, I mean myself. And I had to find myself first before I was permanently and fully responsible of making sure somebody else can realize themselves. And once I got to that point, yes, 30 something years had passed by. I haven't found a viable suitor for me. And until then, as they say, I'm gonna live my best life because I don't feel like I'm missing anything.
It's I have to laugh at what you're saying because it's so true that there are times where single people wish and aspire to be married, thinking that the grass is green on the other side. And then you've got some people who are married, like you said, who are not happy, who wish that they were single. And now I've had the fortune of living both worlds. And I will tell you that the longer I've been divorced now for 8 years.
Isn't that long?
It has been November 6th, 2013 will be 8 years.
I know the exact date.
and I just remember even when I told people I was divorced or getting a divorce, and they were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "I'm not," because I had to get to a place. I'd been married. I can't remember how long I had been married before I made the decision to go through with it. But the thought had crossed my mind multiple times because I was not happy. And I remember when I told my father that I was getting a divorce, and he said, "But you all go and take these family pictures like you're so happy." And at the time, I was like, "So am I not supposed to take family pictures? I got a
Right.
family." Like, you know, but I wasn't. But I didn't have to let everybody know what was going on inside those four walls of my home. But I was not happy. There were a lot of things that had transpired. And for me, it wasn't until I turned 35 that I finally said, like, I have to stop living my life for other people.
Mhm.
and I have to do what's going to make me happy. And to be perfectly honest, one of the reasons why, the main reason why I stayed in the marriage as long as I did is because I had children. And I felt that, my parents were still married. I didn't want to raise children in a single parent home. But then on the flip side, if they're in a household where you have parents who are not happy, who are constantly bickering back and forth, and that's a toxic environment. Why would anybody want to raise children in a toxic environment and then they don't have an opportunity to see really how a marriage, where there's like open lines of communication, honesty, and trust, like those are the things that children should see, not the the toxicity and chaos.
The skeleton of what it should be like, because it's just like, oh, it's just like, here's the mama, here's the daddy, here's the kids. It's just a branch, but then there's no leaves on it. There's no substance to it, and people
Right.
are caught up in the outline of it, and not necessarily the intangibles that come along with that.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, again, it's just, I mean, I hear you say I've done some great things. I don't know. I guess my dad tells me I'm too humble. It's just, again, I have I have certain things that needed to be excavated, and I understood, even as far as, like, let's just say a man goes, like, until and I'm not so career driven, because I definitely, I definitely live my life. I have no issue with that. But I've just always been very focused, even when I was in school. As much as a kind of hooligan as I was behind the scene, I knew my business was in the front and my party was in the back. I just always kind of had a balance with that type of stuff. And
Mhm.
I even used to tell my parents, like, I'm not a Miss Goody Two Shoes by any stretch of the means. Like, don't
Don't
get it,
get it twisted.
don't get it twisted. I'm a human being. I live my life, but I like to keep people out of my face. So in a large way, like, I was very driven in my own ways, but then the reward that came along with that was freedom.
Mhm.
You're right. People leave you alone. It was a simple equation. That was just what I went with.
How do you protect your peace?
Healthy boundaries. That was another thing that I was going to add on to, like, for those individuals who might be stuck. Um, Healthy boundaries are extremely important, because as forceful as I may be with being direct, and I don't mean in a negative way, but I have no issue in a lot of ways saying what comes out of my mouth. But a healthy boundary sets everyone up for success, because if it comes out, it's not like, it goes back to, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's not, oh, you this, or when you do this or you do that. Hey, when you say this, it makes me feel this way. When you do this, this is how this makes me feel. Not you're doing. And here's what I'm okay with accepting. Here's what I'm not okay accepting. Here's where I feel the line is being drawn to be disrespectful. Sometimes we don't know what disrespect means to us until it actually happens. You
Mhm.
know? So you can't, I don't know anybody that has like a full 10 bullet checklist. I mean, of course, there are like superficial things but that's different for everybody at the same time. What I might find okay, you might find extremely like, oh, no, no, no. So there's not like this general rule, but again, setting healthy boundaries. And that comes in every aspect of life, because even in my career, I have been put in situations or have been given opportunities that may have looked like they were the shiny new object, but my healthy boundary within myself, what does this mean for me 10 years down the road to just detour for this quick little satisfaction here? Nope. It might take me maybe 6 more months to a year, but this detour is going to push me back 10 years, So it's just the best thing I can say is healthy boundaries. And that's even for yourself,
Mhm.
knowing when to engage and when to withdraw, and being okay with the fact that everyone is not going to like it. especially the people who have reaped the benefits of you not having any healthy boundaries. They are going to react violently to you withdrawing from them. It's okay. The energy vampires will soon find somebody else to suck their blood, and you will see very quickly and very surely they were not there for your best interest anyway.
Stay tuned for part 2 of Light It Up. Brave Women, Bold Moves, Choosing Courage Over Fear with special guest Siddeeqah Ra'Oof.